Making sure that you can deploy from your GitHub repository into Azure is kind of an important thing. I feel strongly enough about that in the latest version of my book, Beginning in Azure Static Web Apps with Blazor, I decided to add a chapter at the end focusing on infrastructure as code so that readers could move out from just having it as a hobby thing to looking at how you can use it in real life in a professional environment. Yeah, however, one of my reviewers did point out that it kind of meant that I jumped from being really hand-holding through the rest of the book, trying to make sure that everything was understandable in bite-sized chunks, to throwing my readers in at the deep end. This is not a simple subject. I didn't think that I could really do it justice in the book without taking up even more pages and maybe confusing people even more, so the compromise that I thought about is this video. We're going to walk through the process of adding the Azure credentials together, adding them to GitHub, and in follow-up videos, we'll be looking at generating the pipelines and even looking at how we can add our custom domains. Let's get started. So the first thing that we're going to need to do is we need to make an app registration. Now, this is what we're going to use in order to authenticate ourselves when deploying from that GitHub pipeline into our Azure subscription. So we need to go to the app registrations page. And we are going to create a new app registration. You need to give this a name that you can remember later on in the flow. So we're just going to call this GitHub deploy video. Just something that's memorable that I remember later. As you will see in a couple of minutes, I have an amount of these from all of the work that I did in writing and testing the book. We can leave everything as default here. We only need the single tenant and just click register. That happens nice and quickly. Now we need to add some federated credentials inside of the clients and certificates section that we can pass into GitHub in order to authenticate ourselves. So we're going to go into federated credentials, create a new one, and we want a GitHub Actions deploying Azure resources, which kind of speaks for itself. We're going to need two of these, one for our main branch for when we're pushing to production, and one for our pull requests so that we can run and update information when we are making a pull request and we want a staging environment like we've seen in the past. We need to add our organization and our repository. Easiest way I find for that is to just go to the repository, copy the organization from the URL, and then we're going to come and paste that back in. And we're going to do the same for the repository. So beginning static web apps. So let's put that one in. Then we need to say what type of entity. This one is going to be our main branch. So we want to log in when we are doing something to a branch, and that branch is main. Then we need to give it a name. And this you can't change in the future. It is the description for the credentials that you will see elsewhere. For us, it doesn't really matter too much. So let's just say swar book deploy main. You can enter a description. It's not mandatory, so we're going to skip that for today. Remember that you cannot have capital letters. Next, we're going to add a second one. Again, we're going to use the same GitHub Actions deploying Azure resources. We need to enter the same information. So as we already have our repository in memory, we can bring that one over. And then we can do the swar for beginners as the organization. Entity type here is going to be pull request. It does what it says on the tin. Whenever we make a pull request, this credential can be used. So this is going to be swar book PR. Save that, and we now have our two credentials which will be used when we are logging in GitHub. Right now, though, these credentials don't do anything. First of all, we need to add rights to these credentials so that they can make changes inside of our subscription to create and update resources inside of there. So we're going to come to our home screen. We're going to go to subscriptions. I only have one subscription, so that's easy to pick on. And then we want our access control, which does what you expect it to do. I want to add a role assignment. And because we are creating and updating resources, we do need a privileged role here. We're going to use a contributor role. Then inside of members, we're going to select members, and we're going to say GitHub. And then we have our deploy video. Now, this can be a little bit confusing because although it is there, you don't see it unless you search for it, whereas you do see the actual people inside of your subscription. So just remember, if you don't see it instantly, it's fine. Search for it. It will be there. We're going to select that. We're going to review and assign. We want a contributor for our GitHub video deploy, and then we're going to assign it. Once that is done, there's 3 more things that we need to do inside of the portal in order to get GitHub working. We need the information out of here that's required for actually deploying into our account. So first of all, we need our subscription ID. So I'm just going to copy this off screen so I have it available for the next step. And we also need information about our app registration. We go to the video app, we need the client ID, and we also need our directory ID. So let's copy that one to the clipboard here as well. Of course, having these recordings isn't going to help us a lot if we can't use them. So the next step that we're going to take in this first video is to add these inside of GitHub so that they're available for us in the next step. Let's have a look at the screens and see where we go from here. I have here my repository, SWA for Beginners, Beginning Static Web Apps. This is the one that I used when writing the book to make sure that my code did what I expected it to. So hopefully it will do the same when you develop it as well. In order to set secrets that happen inside of workflows, we need to go to the settings. We need to have a look at the secrets and variables and the actions. And here we have 2 different possibilities. We have our secrets. So we have our client ID, which we're going to be using inside of our pipelines later on. We have a directory ID, and we have a subscription ID. So we just need to make sure that we have this information inside of there. Now, I have done this before, so these are available. But if this is empty, you can always just click New Repository Secret and enter it as needed. What we're going to do instead, though, is update what I have in my pipeline with those secrets that we just created. So let's edit the client ID. Now, when you update a secret, you will not see the original value. Once you enter it in here, you do not see it again. So if it's something that you might need in the future, don't assume you can just pull it out of GitHub. Make sure that you have it in a safe encrypted location. Let's pass in the client ID that we had before. Let's edit our directory ID, which is the tenant ID that we copied earlier. I don't know why it has 2 different names in Azure. And then let's update our Azure subscription ID, although this one doesn't actually change because, of course, we're deploying to the same subscription that I've been deploying to all along. You can also see here that we have the Cosmos connection string, which I set up previously. We don't need to alter that one. And then as well as secrets, we have variables. We're going to be using these inside of the pipelines as well. And we're going to set up 3 different ones. We want our Azure region, our resource group name, and the name of our static web app itself. Now that we have this set up, we can start to run our pipelines. So we're starting here inside of the Azure portal because I just want to show you that the SWA Beginners IAC resource group does not exist. In fact, I just deleted it from the last test run that I did. And what we're going to do now, we're going to talk about the pipelines later. But first of all, I just want to show you them in action. So if we come to our actions and we say create and set up SWA infrastructure, we can run our workflow, go into our workflow, and we should see that it sets up the job. We should hopefully see that it logs in okay. And it did log in okay. And now it is creating our static web app for us. And just like that, everything is complete and you weren't sitting here watching it for 1 minute, 17 seconds like I was. Now, if we go back into Azure, we should be able to refresh this screen and hopefully see a resource group. Like so. And we have our SWA for beginners. And if we click on this link, we have a Clone KIF and we have a site ready for deploy. But that's for another day. So I hope that this was useful for you. I hope that it helped along with chapter 15 in understanding what it is that we need to do inside of the Azure portal in order to get our application out. If you have any questions, please reach out in the comments or reach out to me at bluesky@stacyclouds.net, stacy-clouds.net even. Links also in the description. And I will see you for the next video when we will be talking about the 3 pipelines we're using and how they run to deploy our application. See you then.